Notice is hereby given of, well, Anthony, you ready? Okay. Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 6:30 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, March 7th, 2023 in Cafeteria B of Westfield High School, 550 Dorian Road, Westfield, New Jersey. The board will move immediately into private session to discuss matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, including personnel matters. The public portion of the meeting will resume at 7 p.m. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. And this is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Thursday, March 2nd, 2023, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education, located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap into Westfield, and Patch.com. A meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Patty, can we have a roll call?
Rob Bonaccio.
Here.
Michael Beelan.
Here.
Kent Diamond.
Here.
Brendan Galligan.
Here.
Layla Morelli. Here. Sonal Patel. Here. Kristen Sonic Schmeltz. Here. Mary Wickens. Here.
Thank you, Patty. And could we have a flag salute? Sonal.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sonal. I ask the board to approve the following resolution. Resolved that the Board of Education move into private session for purposes of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, including personnel matters, and be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sonal. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we're in private session. All right, guys, thank you for bearing with us while we were in private session. We're now back in public with announcements. Any announcements tonight? Mary?
No.
Sonal? Layla?
Okay. It is that time of year when we look forward to spring musicals and celebrating the considerable talents of the cast, crew, and theater directors at Edison and Roosevelt Intermediate School and Westfield High School. More information on each of these productions is posted under News on the district website. In the meantime, mark your calendars for the following. The Edison Theater Department presents Cinderella the Musical. A special general admission matinee of this recreation of Rodgers and Hammerstein's classic musical will be held on Thursday, March 9th at 4 p.m., with evening performances on Friday, March 10th and Saturday, March 11th at 7 p.m. Tickets can be purchased at eis.booktix.com. The Westfield High School Theater Department will present Sunday in the Park with George on Thursday through Saturday, March 16th, 17th, and 18th. All performances are at 7:30 p.m. Visit whstd.booktix.com to purchase tickets. Step back into the 1950s as the cast and crew at Roosevelt present Grease, with a matinee performance at 4 p.m. on March 23rd and evening performances at 7 p.m. on March 24th and 25th. Tickets are available at ris.booktix.com.
Thank you, Layla. Kent?
All right, some good news for students. All schools will have an early dismissal this Friday, March 10th. The afternoon will be devoted to Professional Development Day for the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. Rob, announcements?
3 Westfield Public Schools administrators will present on power and positionality. Try that. How district leaders move DEI projects forward at the Women's Leadership Conference on March 27th and 28th, hosted by the New Jersey Association of School Administrators and New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association. K-12 Supervisor of Social Studies Andrea Brennan, K-12 Supervisor of English Language Arts Liz Riley, and Lincoln Principal Dr. Tiffany Jacobson will share lessons learned about curricular materials, professional development, and community engagement surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the Westfield Public Schools.
Thank you, Rob. Kristen, any announcements tonight?
This is a reminder that as part of a generous donation from the Westfield Education Fund, Imagine, a Center for Coping with Loss, will host a virtual presentation for parents and caregivers this Thursday, March 9th from 7 to 8 p.m., entitled Supporting Children Coping with Loss. This presentation will consider the many definitions of loss in the wake of the pandemic. More information, including a link to the important virtual event, can be found on the news section of the district and school websites. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Mike? All right. The next regular public meeting of the Board of Education will be on Tuesday, March 28th in Cafeteria B at Westfield High School beginning at 7 p.m. The board will consider the final 2023-24 school district operating budget before it is presented to the Westfield voters on Tuesday, April 25th. The meeting will be live streamed via the district YouTube channel, which viewers can access on the board tab on the district website. The complete agenda will be available on Friday, March 24th, also on the board tab. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Gonzalez for our 4th installment of the budget.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And this evening, once again, we will be presenting another overview of what will become the preliminary budget to be submitted to the County Office of the Department of Education for their review as part of the annual budget development cycle. This evening, our business administrator, Patricia Ramos, and myself are going to run through a series of slides that really represent somewhat of a review, but also a finalization of the details. Okay, so as always, the presentation that we're providing this evening is also posted on our district website for anyone. All they would have to do is go to the Board of Education submenu on the website, and in the agendas for the current year, the table of agendas includes both the attachments, the agendas and the presentations for each board meeting. So this meeting's presentation, inclusive of the prior 3 presentations, is now posted. So as you see, this evening, we are going to do just a quick review of the potential tax increase over the past 3 meetings. We recognize that in presenting the budget, that there were a lot of moving parts that were in part within our control as we work with our administration and our board to make decisions about what to include and what to propose to the taxpayers. But we also recognize that there are moving parts that were out of our control, and that is as we work to make the decisions regarding what our expenditures and what our revenues are, we are waiting details from our insurance broker as well as from the State Department of Education to provide us with our state aid figures. So in as much as we wanted to be able to be as comprehensive in our presentations, we recognize that there are always going to be blanks in our presentations or tentative placeholders throughout the course of our presentation. But nevertheless, beginning in January, the administration and the board engaged in conversations about the development of this budget, recognizing some of the challenges and the limitations that we experienced last year, and the decision to move to an April election and budget vote in order to present the opportunity for the taxpayers now to have a say in the budget, but also to provide us as the Board of Education and Administration the opportunity to present a budget that fully funds our public schools, as well as presents opportunities for expansion and growth. So this evening, we'll review those tax increases just to help bring us to our current state. We will then move into a review of our expenditures and revenues as those had been presented previously, but now with the final numbers, we have a better opportunity to see how these numbers are playing out. And then go into greater detail regarding the proposed ballot questions, because this is where the rubber hits the road, and the conversations that we have are now going to be actualized and realized in the ballot questions that will be presented to the taxpayers. And then last but not least, dive into the projected tax impact based upon the slides above. So quickly, let me begin with just taking us back to January. In January, we didn't have the opportunity to have the full picture in front of us. So our initial conversations with the Board of Education began with a discussion about what we would need in order to simply maintain our existing programs and services. And even with without adding an additional program or enhancement, we immediately were faced with the reality that everything that we would need would not have fit under a 2% tax levy cap limit, which is what is the standard limit for school operating budgets, whether you're in a November election or whether you're in an April election and budget vote. The slide that you see before you shows that the maintenance of program services and offerings would require a budget that was able to sustain approximately a 4.5% increase from the prior year. 4.5% increase in the tax levy in the prior year. So if we were to simply look at our existing 2% cap with no adjustment means that we didn't apply any of the potential health care waivers that the state would afford if it were available, or any adjustments to the cap based upon enrollment, which we would not be eligible for. With that limit, we would still require a first question to increase the tax levy to the limit of 2%, and then a second question that would require an additional 2.57% in order to just meet the status quo needs of the district. We anticipated that at the end of last year, if we all remember that, which is why we knew we had to come to the decision of presenting this budget to the public for a vote. During that January 17th conversation, the board and the administration also made the commitment and decision that we would also use this April budget vote to start to build our programs and enhance our offerings throughout the district. So after January 17th, the administration began their work to finalize decisions regarding what we believed was going to be necessary to enhance our programs in this first budget vote. And that's what was then presented in February. So in February, the first board meeting we have on February 7th, we were able to start to incorporate a few things. We were able to start to incorporate the addition of a healthcare waiver that was starting to become more and more clear because we were able to open up the budget software, start plugging in numbers. We were able to see that due to the increases in the state health benefits plan, school districts throughout the state would have been eligible for an increase to the tax levy cap or an adjustment to the tax levy cap that in our case equated to a 3.61% increase. So what that meant was that had we not had the opportunity to go to the public for a vote and we remained in our November election, we would have been able to theoretically adopt a budget at 3.61% without any voter approval. As you'll see in this slide, and just as a reminder, that still would not have covered all of our existing expenses in order to operate the budget. So we still, even as early as February 7th, knew that the second question was going to be necessary in order to keep us whole. But as you'll see and note here, it's also where we began the conversation about what additional supports could be added to the budget and ultimately to the taxpayers for their vote in order to start building back our programs. In this case, the additional supports came in the form of requests for an expansion of our guidance and counseling program through additions at the elementary, middle, and high school, additions of interventionists or academic support teachers at our middle school as well as our elementary level in order to be able to provide the academic supports necessary to assist our students as they continue to experience our curricular needs with coming out of the pandemic and the adjustments or readjustments to a full-time, full in-person experience. All of those additional supports plus the maintenance of our existing programs is what you see represented here with a tax levy increase in total that exceeded 5%. So now we move on to today. So between the January board meeting and today, we've discovered that there were a number of variables that we have been able to confirm the final answers to. The healthcare adjustment was factored in, and we all saw that that healthcare adjustment was increased our first question to a 3.6%. But then we also recently, within the last week, were in receipt of our state aid figures from the based off of the governor's budget address. And based off of the governor's budget address and based upon the receipt of our state aid, we had conservatively hoped we would remain flat or potentially would have had a $500,000 increase, but we are pleased to report that we received a $965,000 increase. And in doing so, that additional state aid allowed us to then move items that would have been required for a second question and move them into the first question. And understanding that when we move personnel that were in the second question into the first question, we move them, we move their salaries, and we move their benefits. So when we move their benefits in there, that actually allows us to also reap the benefit of the healthcare adjustment as well. So our 3.6 healthcare adjustment from February 7th now increased to what you see before you as a 3.95% increase. So all of our programs and offerings, fortunately, are able to fit in the first question, leaving only those additional supports that had been presented at the last board meeting, as been described a few moments ago. Only those additional supports will be in the second question. So the budget that we are presenting still includes the maintenance of programs, still includes everything that we've been talking about up to this point, but how it is divided between the first and second question is what we are finalizing this evening. So no new programs, no new additions are being proposed this evening, but the division between the first and second question is now finalized. So I'm going to invite, at this time, Patty to run us through the next few slides.
I'm glad that I explained it well because you got it.
Thank you.
So, it does take a little while to understand that every time, like when I got the state aid number and I moved people back, because the second question, as we stated last time, was all staff members, so staff members and health benefits. Every time I moved one staff member back into the main budget because of the state aid, and I moved the health benefits, it allowed me to move more. So it's not that I was increasing our budget for the health benefits, it was just that it's allowing you more of an adjustment because state health benefits increased by 15% last year. And that's why everyone in the state is reaping the benefit of, well, the benefit in that you can adjust the cap this year, which we haven't been able to do in a number of years. So this first slide is our proposed expenditures for 23-24. The total amount has not changed from last week. We didn't add anything else to last week. The only thing that changed was the numbers moved around. Salaries and benefits moved from the second question to the first question. Even the out-of-district tuition, so other lines changed based on amounts that came in from the state and adjustments, final adjustments that were made based on numbers that we had received. For instance, we have to pay charter schools. So that number came in. There's like 3 kids that go to charter school. I have to wait for state aid in order to get that number, so that number changes things in the budget. So there's little numbers that were moved and fine-tuned, but the overall budget is the same dollar amount as last week. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that I showed in the revenues. So with the first 2 columns on the left were last week's numbers. The 2 on the right are the final numbers now. So you can see the tax levy has increased by about $368,000, but that's just moving it from the proposal into the first question. The overall amount has not changed. The difference there is that everything that we have, as we've been saying in the first question, if that were to get voted down, it goes to the town council, and they get to review the budget to see if there would be any additional cuts made to the budget. If the second proposal gets voted down, we lose everything in the second question. So by being able to move as much as we could back to the first question, the first ballot question, it makes a difference for current staff members in the district. As you can see, the state aid did increase, as Ray said, by $965,000, which is roughly a 14% increase in state aid, and that is around the average that you saw in the county. I mean, some districts that were larger did get a little bit more, but it was in line with districts in our category, in our demographic. So now what everyone's been waiting for is the ballot questions. So the wording in these is pretty much prescribed by the state, how it has to, I've gone over this with the county now, and the first question will be resolved that there should be raised for the general fund $111,882,749 for the ensuing school year. That's the base general. That we do not vote on the debt service taxes. The debt service taxes were already approved when the referendums were approved. So the only thing the voters are voting on is the general fund tax levy. The second question, which is the additions, would be an additional $994,995. And in that question, we'll detail, these taxes will be used exclusively to add the following positions: the 2.0 elementary guidance counselors, 2.0 intermediate student assistance counselors, the 1.0 high school student assistant counselor, 4.8 intermediate intervention teachers, and 0.5 elementary academic support teacher. Then again, this wording is also mandated by the state. Approval of these taxes will result in a permanent increase to the tax base. These proposed additional expenditures are in addition to those necessary to achieve the New Jersey student learning standards. So basically what this is saying is Westfield's budget is above adequacy. Adequacy would be having one nurse in the entire district, one media specialist in the entire district. So we just have to put that in there just to show that these are things that are above adequacy, that we can put them in the second question for people to vote on. So now if we go to the next slide, we have the potential tax impact, which again, you'll see the overall assessed home is $806,000. So the taxes on an average home, the second question is now changed down to only $89. The first question will be $355. The total taxes, I put a breakout in on the right-hand side. For the general fund, $10,764 of the average assessed tax in Westfield is for the general fund. $185 is for debt service. That's the portion that's not being voted on. So the total tax increase is the $10,900. The total taxes would be $10,949 to the average taxpayer, which represents an increase of $444 over the prior year. The debt service taxes went down by $1. They're very steady. We're in a period where the bond repayments are pretty steady. Our debt service aid that we received was steady, so there's not really a change there. So that's about all I have. So if you have any questions about the...
And actually, just a few things I want to point out, because I think it's important. We've often referred to or discussed the budget and the increases in terms of percentages, right? The percent at cap or above cap or over cap. But it's important to really understand that when the taxpayers are going to vote on the budget, it is not based upon a percent increase. It's based upon the dollar amount. So that's going to be one of the key communication points that we as a board and as an administration in the district will have to ensure is readily understood, so that the taxpayers are not confused or surprised when they walk into a booth and they see numbers that don't necessarily reflect what they were expecting to see. So we need to prepare them for everything. The other thing that I do want to underscore, because it's crucially important, the reason we are finding ourselves in the position to have an adjusted tax levy cap at 3.95% is two reasons. Well, three reasons. One is because Patty is amazing and was able to make all of the numbers fit appropriately and strategically where they needed to be able to maximize that cap. But also the other two reasons. The other two reasons is because there was an adjustment that was available to us for healthcare. That is not available every year. That had not been available for several years, and it was something that we needed and worked to our benefit this year. But it is not a guarantee, and it certainly wasn't a guarantee when the board and the administration had discussed whether or not to move the election and the budget vote to April. The second was the increase in state aid. Yes, we did see an increase in state aid last year of approximately $1 million, but that too was not guaranteed. Over time, the current governor had made it a commitment to fund the public school funding formula at the prescribed rates, And in our case, we've been fortunately on the receiving side of that funding formula, whereas colleagues in other districts, unfortunately, are not seeing the same increases. But even with that, the notion of that increase is not perpetually going to be in our benefit. What that means is in the next year, and I believe next year, we will continue to see one more increase in state aid, or we're projected to see one more increase in state aid in order to meet the full terms of the funding formula. But then at that point, then we should be receiving our full share of what the state has allocated, which means each year after that will probably be closer to flat. So everything that we experienced this year was really as a result of some important anomalies. The adjustments to our healthcare costs and the adjustment to our state aid. Those two items are not guaranteed each year. So I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that as we continue to move forward and think about future budget years.
There was one more item that I wanted to throw in there too, because in the resolution, you'll see the dollar amount is more because there is a capital reserve withdrawal that I had to put in. I was waiting for final information about the project that we're going to be doing at Roosevelt Intermediate School for the facade work. And that was included in our capital reserve withdrawal for this year, for 22-23. But in speaking to the county and our auditor, if the bids don't come in good or something happens that delays the project, I need to be able to show that I'm pulling it out of capital reserve again next year. It's just a statutory requirement, so it's being put in again for next year. So that's where the difference, I was just kind of waiting for final numbers from the architect on that, and it's not in this presentation, but it is in the resolution, the dollar amount.
Okay, so just want to conclude the presentation this evening, our portion. Just reminding everyone that on March 28th, we will be presenting to the board the county reviewed and approved budget for their final vote and approval prior to placing the questions on the ballot for the April 25th election and budget vote. On the 28th, we will also be holding our public hearing so that any member of the public, as they've always had the opportunity to come and speak, would also have that opportunity on that day to also share their comments with the Board of Education and Administration at that time. So at this time, any questions from the board, comments from the board?
Patty, when we go to the public for a bond question, we're allowed to include an interpretive statement of some kind. Obviously, these all follow a prescriptive measure, but will we have the same ability with a budget vote?
I have seen that on some of them, so I'm guessing that we would be able to, but we have it pretty deep, the wording is pretty detailed in the question, so, I mean, we can talk about if you wanted an interpretive statement, but it is pretty detailed in the question.
Right.
Any other questions?
Just one comment for Patty. During the finance discussion, we had a discussion about the 0.89% increase for the second question, and luckily we got that extra state aid, which amounts to approximately a little less than $500,000, which allowed us to have that at 0.89%. And if you remember from a couple weeks ago when we had our presentation, it was higher than that, and that increase budgeted out to reduce that overall second question amount. Just want to, Patty, maybe you just want to clarify why we, it's only a 0.89%, but why did we use that higher number? Why did we not go throw additional items into the budget? Because this came up during finance, and 3 out of the 4 board members wanted to make sure we kept the budget as low as possible, but still add these services and not continue to add additional services just because we got that budget funding.
So you're correct. I've been using the projection of an additional $500,000 in state aid. So when we did get almost double that, you know, of course the thought is like, oh, you got extra money, but it's not that. The administration has been working since this summer on developing the budget, and probably before that. It's really just been ongoing since last year after the budget cuts and everything. So we have met with supervisors, principals, different leaders within the central office building to go over and thoughtfully prepare out where additions make the most sense in the district, given that we've had cuts over so many years, and what makes sense now after COVID for our students. What can the administration provide to the students and will be successful at when it's added? So Ray and I feel very comfortable that we have met with all stakeholders and that the budget that we presented was the final budget and that we didn't need to add anything else to it.
Right, and we really benefited from the state aid by getting that 1%. If we didn't get, by getting that extra $500,000, if it was flat, we would have been at the budget Patty proposed, or if for some reason they had cut the budget, we would have been even above that. Or, so I just wanted to make that clear. Yes, we did a lot of effort moving to the April elections, but we benefited for the budget increase, which allowed only for a minimal increase for question number 2.
Well, and Mike, it's important to note that question 2 is only additions. The previous iterations included just out of necessity things that we currently are funding this year and out of necessity have to ask the voters for separately, and put us in a spot where we could pass the main budget and still be looking at cuts at the end of April had the second question been turned down. So now it's a clean question.
Yes, there will be no cuts to any existing staff with this budget, and no cuts are relied upon in question 2, but we do get to expand some services within question 2. I was just addressing the issue, Brendan, where one member of the Finance Committee said, well, why don't we add more to the budget and just increase the taxes even further?
Yeah. And the answer is that even if there are things on the wish list, we are not ready to implement them. We don't have the space or the staff or the supervision for additional personnel, which may be desired, but we're not there yet.
Correct.
It also makes sense to wait since we're in the midst of a strategic plan, because we'll have the strategic plan and then we can follow that.
Yeah, and a lot of discussion revolved around how much do we ask the voters for the first time we're asking in 13 years. And the consensus seemed to be, let's take a conservative approach and ask for only what we truly need and can implement.
Yeah, and Rob, I, and Brendan were all in agreement with that on the Finance Committee. Thank you.
Any questions from this half of the table?
That's all good.
All right. Thank you, Patty. Drove by last week and your car was in the parking lot late at night, so.
It was a very quick turnaround.
Yeah. All right. One second here. All right. Patrick, do you have a report for us tonight?
No, I'll be deferring my report to the next meeting.
All right, thank you. Do we have a curriculum report tonight?
Good evening. So SIP met on March 2nd. We reviewed several curricula in world languages and the practical arts, along with some field trip proposals and a proposal for a new pre-calculus book in mathematics. The majority of the curricula we reviewed are on tonight's agenda for first reading in item A, and then item B and C on tonight's agenda pertain to the field trips and the new pre-calc book, respectively. I did want to note that the practical arts curriculum on tonight's agenda is for the new Entra X dual enrollment course with the University of Delaware that we mentioned in a previous SIP report. I lost my place. And now we have the curriculum guide available for your review. It starts on page 192 of this week's board attachments, and I highly recommend that you go through it. It's a wonderful course. And one of the board's questions when we initially presented the dual enrollment initiative was whether or not receiving course credit from the University of Delaware is required or if it's optional when enrolling in the course. We received confirmation that the dual enrollment is required to participate in the course. However, if a student is unable to afford the $500 tuition, University of Delaware and the district will work with each case individually to ensure that all students who want to take the course can take the course by providing the necessary financial aid and/or scholarships. And then our next SIP meeting is scheduled for March 30th. And other than that, does anybody have any questions? Okay, that's our report. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Mike, Finance and Facilities?
Yes. So Finance and Facilities discussed a number of different topics. We had George Duthie, who is the architect, working on the plans for addressing the Roosevelt facade. He provided the project and projected timelines and costs. The way we're looking to do the project is phased in over 2 years, primarily during the summers to address the issues before anything continues to deteriorate further. We expect the bids to be sent out in late March for approval in the first meeting in May. Lincoln soil testing, we haven't yet received back the tests that were done on Friday, February 17th. Synergy, who's the company doing the tests, will present the district with their findings once they're available. Also, just note on the playground equipment, Lincoln is fundraising to swap out the playground pieces to make the equipment more inclusive for the students in their playground area. Discussed it quite a bit, nothing really to add, but we did do a review of the budget and the preliminary budget numbers reviewed, and Patty answered questions, and we had a lengthy discussion on that and the state aid. And then there was a topic there's a topic that Kristen asked to be brought to the board, and I also followed up about long-term planning for the fields so that we can look at doing a facility audit. We had Sean MacArthur in there, who is the field supervisor, to go and provide him some of these ideas. So no decisions necessarily made yet, but I also brought up it's not just necessarily the fields, but overall the schools as a whole. So we're look at the landscaping, obviously budget permitting, but look at just the overall view of the district and what can we do in the short term and what we can do as far as a larger budget initiative should we go to bond and want to look at that in the future. And our next meeting is scheduled for April 7th. And that's the report.
All right, any questions for Mike? All right.
Thank you.
Policies?
Sure. So there's nothing on the agenda this evening for action, but we did have a meeting on March 2nd where we discussed and reviewed central office job descriptions and administrative organization. It was a discussion that was really informational in nature at the time. It's nothing to be, no action to be taken at the time. We also discussed several policies which will be on the next agenda, including a new policy 3232, which is about tutoring services, again to align with Strauss-Esme. We reviewed the grievance policy, a Blue Devil television policy, and the media relations policies. So when is our next meeting? It's April
13th is our next committee meeting for PPG.
Okay, so April 13th is our next meeting. And any questions? Any other comments? So, one more thing. We reviewed Sustainable Jersey for Schools program, and it is on our policy agenda on the board portal, and we recommend that all of the committees take a look at this and familiarize yourself with it so everybody can be on the same page and review.
All right, thank you, Leila. If there are no questions or comments from the board on committee reports? All right. During this portion of the meeting, district residents and staff are invited to address the Board of Education on agenda action items only. The board requests that individuals state their name and address for the record, the specific action items they're commenting on, and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president or designee and not to individual board members or staff. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey, and the board bears no responsibility nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, the superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during this public forum, all public comments will be considered. Each speaker's statement will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes in duration. If you'd like to address us on agenda action items tonight, please come to the podium.
Kyle George, 605 Shore Hills Court. I want to talk about finance item B. In that resolution, there's a capital reserve withdrawal in the amount of $5.8 million for the facade renovation at Roosevelt. I understand there are some budgetary mechanics here, and maybe the actual work is necessary and unavoidable, but can we get a presentation on what's costing $5.8 million? That's, it's just a very large sum of money. And if I recall correctly, this is the third withdrawal for this project, or at least the third withdrawal, and by far the largest, at least that I can recall. And in case anyone has forgotten, I'm here to remind you that Roosevelt is where the teacher recently overdosed on fentanyl in front of students, and to date $0 have been withdrawn to conduct an independent investigation into that matter. The irony of a facade renovation when there's no commitment to renovate, metaphorically speaking, the goings-on inside the school is somewhat striking. At this point, can you just confirm officially that you have no interest in addressing the systemic problems inside the school that allowed this to happen? Thank you.
Good evening, Brian Crawford, 795 Knollwood Terrace. I just have a question that perhaps you can address related to question 2. And that is, I understand that, the point of it really is to add additional counselors and also interventionists, which sounds great. But how is that going to change the level of service for our students? In other words, because of this, how many more students per week can receive service from an interventionist or service from a counselor? I think it would be helpful for the community to understand that in terms of what the real ROI is here, in terms of what has been proposed. And also, is this going to increase next year or the year after? And if it is, why wouldn't we just ask for it now? So understanding the ROI in terms of the question, I think, would be really helpful for residents in terms of telling the story of why they should get behind this and support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing nobody else at the podium, the first public comment session is now closed. There will be a second comment session at the end of the meeting. I ask the board to approve the February 20th, 2023 board meeting minutes and the February 20th, 2023 executive session minutes. Can I have a second? Thank you, Kent. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. And as Kent, can you move governance? I'm sorry? Can you move the governance items for us tonight?
Sure.
Sorry, it's not here.
I'd like to move items A in the governance under tonight's agenda, including the 4 incidences of HIB for reasons set forth. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
All right. Patty?
Sahara Aziz, Rob Bonaccia,
Yes.
Michael Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Layla Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Thank you. Personnel?
I'd like to move items A to H under the personnel section of tonight's agenda. Can I have a second? Thank you, Ken.
Any, Dr.
Gonzalez?
Retirements?
Yes. In addition to before I get to the retirements, I do want to just acknowledge that this evening we will be having the opportunity to vote on my recommendation for 2 new administrators in the district who are going to replace leaders who have been part of this community, helping to see our students and teachers grow. But I also see those same opportunities presented by the leaders this evening. So Alex Linden is on the agenda this evening as my recommendation for the position of Supervisor of Special Education, Pre-K-12, and Lenova Shaw will be my recommendation for the principal of McKinley Elementary School. And again, both of those recommendations come as a result of a thorough vetting and committee review. The individuals were selected out of a pool of a total of over 120 candidates combined. Those 120 candidates, came from all portions of the state with various experiences and backgrounds. But through the interview process involving teachers, parents, administrators, both central office and school-based, and myself, the individuals who are being recommended this evening truly represent the best of the best. So I'm looking forward to the board's vote this evening. In addition, I am also announcing with regret the retirements of 4 staff members who have given a total of 78 years of service to Westfield students. Walter Barnansky has filled a number of positions in the district in the last 27 years. He's been a substitute custodian, a night custodian at Franklin, a mechanics helper, a groundskeeper, and for most of his career, a valued mechanic. Walt is skilled in many areas and can work on multiple projects at the same time. A committed team player with a strong work ethic, he can always be counted on to help whenever he is needed. Nancy Elwell has supported students with care and dedication in her role as a paraprofessional at Jefferson, Roosevelt, Edison, and Tamaqua schools. For 15 years, Nancy has rarely been absent, working diligently with her students who feel comfortable and safe with her. She is an asset to the classrooms where she is assigned due to her ABA training and her strong organizational skills. Nancy has also extended her commitment to the district by serving as a lunch aide and a member of the ESY staff each summer. For 15 years, Marie McGrory has been a paraprofessional who has helped her students in classrooms and by assisting them as a lunch aide and a bus aide who traveled back and forth to school with their student. Marie has been a welcome addition to the staff at McKinley and Edison schools, where she is adept at assisting learners with profound needs. She has particularly enjoyed being part of the iPrep team and finds ways for her students to connect successfully with science, language arts, and social studies instruction. Marie's goal is that her students have every opportunity Excuse me, I just lost my place. To participate full in school life. Although Ann Minsky began her career in Westfield 21 years ago as a part-time basic skills teacher at Jefferson School, McKinley has long been her beloved home. Ann is an integral member of the 4th grade team and is a leader among her peers, mentoring new members of the staff, serving as an after-school tutor, and volunteering at every McKinley event. Ann was instrumental in expanding the annual Wax Museum into an exciting research project for students, and it is an excellent example of the effort Ann makes to connect students to learning in engaging and meaningful ways. We wish these 4 staff members a happy and healthy retirement.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Any other questions or comments from board members on personnel? All right, Patty?
Sahar Aziz, Rob Bonaccia,
Yes.
Michael Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Layla Morelli. Yes. Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmelz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Thank you.
So at this time, I'd like to invite Lenova and Alex to just come to the podium just to introduce themselves and share a few words with the board and the public.
So, first, I want to thank the board, Dr. Gonzalez, Dr. Weissman, and Ms. Ball for this opportunity. I also want to send out a special thank you to Andrea Lowe, who has been my supervisor and mentor. I can't thank her enough for preparing me to do this job at the highest standard. From the very beginning, which is now 15 years ago, I started my career here in Westfield as a special education teacher. I quickly recognized all the amazing staff members and families, and I knew this was the community I wanted to dedicate my career to. Throughout my experiences in the district and my role as the ESY supervisor, I have developed the confidence and skills to be a trusted leader who makes effective decisions. I am dedicated to assisting teachers in educating and inspiring students across all grade levels and abilities. I plan to continue the traditions of our special education programs, but also expand to meet the needs of our ever-growing population. I have seen firsthand the tremendous growth our students can make with the right interventions and instruction. I am also a proud Westfield resident of 8 years whose children attend or will attend the schools, and I have nothing but the most respect and admiration for the teachers currently serving all of our students. It has been a pleasure working alongside all of these teachers for the last 15 years, and I look forward to taking the next step in my career here in Westfield as the pre-K through 12 supervisor of special services. Thank you.
Something told me to go first. No, I don't know if I can follow that. Good job, Alex. I'm extremely humbled to be selected as McKinley's next principal. Having been in education for over 20 years, when I came to Westfield 2 years ago, I knew that this was the place where I wanted to retire. And to be able to get back to my elementary roots is super exciting for me. So thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to showing Westfield how much more greater McKinley can be.
Congratulations and welcome. All right, Mike?
Yes, I'd like to move items A to G in finance and facilities. Do I have a second? Who's that? Sonal. Okay. A couple items I just want to point out. Item A, we're going to be approving the annual audit that was presented to the Board of Education for the 2021-2022 school year by PKF O'Connor Davies. And item B is the approval of the tentative 2023-2024 budget. I also like to highlight two donations that we've received. For McKinley Elementary School PTO, we had a $5,000 donation to help offset the cost for a field trip for McKinley students. And we also received an anonymous $10,000 donation to purchase storage cubicles by the cafeteria and library at Roosevelt Intermediate School. So I'd like to thank everyone for those donations. Just as an aside, for total donations for 2022 to 2023 are now at $150,509.12. So thank you to everyone who's made these donations. Any questions?
No, Mike, just thank you for totaling all that up. It's easy to get lost in how much they all add up to over 20 some odd board meetings. And truly grateful to all of our community associations for continuing to help us out.
Any questions? Patty, can we have a vote?
You have a question?
Oh, I didn't.
No, right. More a comment on the budget. I wasn't sure whether we should do it then or now when we're voting on it, but just a few things. Just having been part of the finance committee and just seeing this process now go through for a second time. What I'm seeing in this budget and what I'm enjoying seeing here is a mindset shift in this district. When I watched these hearings, before I was on the board, and then last year, the main focus was how do we keep what we have, and how are we going to survive cuts that we need to make. I've heard from a number of people that when supervisors and principals and administrators were presenting their budgets for the year, the comments were, hey, tell us what your wish list is. And that's great, but when the response afterward is, well, that's wonderful, but we can't afford it, so sorry. You hear that a couple of times over and over again, and the wish list sounds like a useless exercise. We are in a position with this budget, because of some of the changes that were made and how it's dealt with, to be in a position this year where we're talking about what are we adding and how are we improving, instead of who isn't going to be here next year or what isn't going to be here next year. And again, I know there was a discussion about how fast can we do this. There's plenty of things in here that would require, flooring it. We'd love to move at 90 miles an hour to get some of this stuff together, but the comment earlier made is, at some point in time, you can't outkick your coverage. Okay, there's an amount of money that you can raise for things, but it's not responsible to the public to raise money for things that we're just not prepared to do yet. And what does that mean, right? I don't want that to sound like the talent isn't here, or the will isn't here, or the interest isn't here. In many cases, it's the space isn't here. We'd love to create this program, but we can't put it anywhere. We'd love to provide this service, but our team isn't ready for that yet. They've been so used to running in place and paddling to keep their head above water, and to, especially in the case of things like counseling, to serve excessive caseloads of students in a fantastic manner, by the way, right? But at some point in time, you've got to say, look, let's get things leveled out, and then let's talk about when we're ready to start adding things in a thoughtful manner. And it would be, when you ask for an increase in the budget and when you ask for it in this manner, residents are going to expect a certain amount of things, right? If we say this is going to happen and it's brought up, we're going to want to see something quantifiable. Well, what happened? You asked us for money for this, and are there more interventionists? Are there more ELA teachers? Is this happening? How many more students, great question, are being served here? And if the answer to that question at the end of next year is we don't know, or not too many, then why in the world would you want to approve the next set of additions? So the idea of a necessary and thoughtful process is something I wanted to see from among the Finance Committee, from among the district team, and it's definitely something I did see. Sort of going back to the initial point, we've been limited in what it is that we can raise. But unfortunately, even though we're limited by what we can raise, the expenses, and quite frankly, and it's been a couple of meetings since I mentioned how much I love state mandates, so I'm gonna let's throw that out here again. We get multiple mandates from the state about what it is that we have to do, whether it makes sense, and there's very little flexibility in how we do what we have to do as well. So when you're getting expenses piled on and piled on and piled on, and you're told you need to do things that are going to increase your budget by 16%, but I'm only going to let you raise it 2%. You can cut for a little while, but at some point in time, think about it in your own lives, right? If the expenses go up, you got to find those new sources of revenue. There's only so much cut you're going to do, right? You're not going to live out of your car, right? You're going to find a new job. You're going to find new sources of revenue. We don't always get that opportunity here. And I say this because I want to put the budget in context, because this is not a simple process. Again, this is my second time through it, and I'm learning a lot. And I walked in, well, why don't we just do this? Well, we're not allowed. What do you mean we're not allowed? Well, why don't we just do it this way? Well, that's not logical. Nope. Right? That's the end. Nope, it's not. So it helps the public to understand that, and it's why I'm glad that we're spending some time over the next month or so on the different sessions. And I want to encourage the public to go to the website and see there are going to be a number of online and in-person sessions where the public can come and ask very specific questions about the budget. And one of the things that we heard last year was, hey, you're doing a public hearing the day you're voting on the thing, right? But we're not, right? Now we're going back and saying, let's have a number of sessions in between this span of time, where the public can ask very specific questions, now having seen this document and some of these numbers. I like the incremental steps, right? You want to do everything all at once, but you've got to do things the right way. And that's, what I want to see here. So, especially when I look at the changes that we're talking about adding, right? It has been made very, very clear to me with parents that I've spoken to that counseling, especially here in the high school, needs a significant improvement. College counseling in particular, career counseling in particular. I don't mean to limit it to just that, right? We are creating full-time positions. We're creating full-time staffing in each building, and I will ask the question because I think it's a good one as far as what's the metric on that, right? If you look back in part 3 of the presentation, you'll see some of those metrics, right? We're making sure that each elementary building is fully staffed with certain counselors, where the interventionists are going to be placed, right? And why the focus here? Well, we've been talking a lot also through this process about things like learning loss. I think we're allowed to say that now, that it actually occurred. So where are we going to focus on our efforts, right? We talk about numbers, we talk about academic numbers, we say how are they fluctuating, why are certain grade levels fluctuating. This is why these decisions were made. And you've got to thank a group of professionals and supervisors and principals and administrators who are listening to what's being said and finding the most effective ways to do that while also being responsible with our money. Last part of this is to put this in context. There is, as Kristen mentioned, a strategic plan that we're engaging in that process. So to say, again, the question had come up, how do you take what we're doing now and give the public an eye for the future? Like, what step are we at? What are the next steps to be? Yeah, when that strategic planning process is complete, you don't just budget from year to year. Now we're talking about budgeting with a plan in mind. And part of the reason I ran is because I thought we were in a little bit of inertia here in this district. We were running in place. We weren't encouraging as much thoughtfulness as we could have from people who are very creative and very thoughtful. So I'm just happy to see that all develop, and I'm happy to see the way it's being done too. We talk about public input into things. Well, there's no bigger way for the public to put their input into something than to vote on it. There's a risk factor here, right? The board could approve a number and say, great and wonderful. But the public now has a chance to vote on what's going to be 60% just about of your tax bill, if not more, for the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, that you can be asking for, which is our students here. So I would encourage everyone, get out, go to those sessions, make sure you vote, because it is not every day that a governing body gives the public a chance to come in and literally have a say in precisely how their tax dollars are spent. And that's what this is. And I said this a lot mostly to encourage the public to not waste this opportunity to get out and vote and listen and be part of a process that, quite frankly, we just haven't had before. So.
All right, thank you, Rob. Any other?
I would just like to quickly add a point on the counselors. I walked into the counselor's office last week, and I think it's just amazing how they're used every day by every single student. And the addition of that high school counselors are going to greatly affect every single student in this high school. And I think it's just really amazing that it's being added in this budget.
Thank you, Patrick.
Brendan, one comment I just want to make. We've sat in a number of finance meetings discussing the budget, and we had Dana in the past, and now we have Patty, and we didn't skip a beat. I mean, Patty's just on top, able to answer every question that we have, and we should really be blessed that we have her in this district, along with Dr. Gonzalez, who, between the both of them, have really put together a solid budget that takes into the concerns of the parents to ensure that we have a solid budget and we don't have any cuts this year.
All right. Anybody else? All right, Patty.
Sahar Aziz, Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Michael Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Layla Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmelz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Curriculum.
I'd like to make a motion for the board to consider action items A through C under SIP today. A, asks the board to approve the Entre X and several world languages curricula for first reading. B, asks the board to approve 2 field trips, one for the Youth and Government Conference at WHS, and the second for first graders at Wilson to visit Turtleback Zoo. And then item C is the approval of the purchase of new pre-calculus textbooks. Thank you, Mike. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, just having sat through the presentation on this dual enrollment program with University of Delaware, the idea that our kids are going to be able to get 3 college credits from a major university for $500 is phenomenal. And really want to thank Warren Hines for his work in pulling this together, along with the teacher, I believe, Denise DiNicola. And look forward to this being one of many similar programs in the future.
I agree. Thank you, Brendan. Anyone else have any comments, questions? Great, can we get a vote?
Sahar Aziz, Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Michael Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Layla Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmelz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
All right. I ask the board to note the notes for the record. Any unfinished business? Any new business? Liaison reports. Okay.
So yesterday was the monthly meeting of the Rec Commission. So just a couple things to report back. One is that there is a comprehensive list of spring and summer programs that the Rec Commission is offering, or the town is offering through the Rec Commission. I think there's a flyer that's up. It's either up today or tomorrow, but definitely head to the Rec Commission website for signups for any one of a number of different programs that are both academic and fun, and all the rest for students. We looked at a group of a flyer that's maybe about 6-7 pages long worth of stuff that the town offers. So definitely take advantage of those, if you can. Also reported was that the town is soon going to be putting out an RFP related to Tamaqua Park. There are elements of Tamaqua Park that were discussed in the Parks Master Plan that seems to be the next thing on the Rec Commission's agenda. That includes potential for different fields, including lit and turf fields, as well as an additional 7 acres of the park that wasn't originally included in that master plan, but was being discussed as being part of potentially the county's master plan. The town's getting prepared to set out an RFP to architects and engineers to look for their opinions on how we might utilize these and achieve the results of the master plan. The last thing, because especially it came from a Girl Scout troop at McKinley, and I think our new McKinley principal is going to be sorry she left for at least one of these things. 4 bronze projects were presented by our McKinley Girl Scout troop, grade 5. 2 of them, one is to create additional signage on recycling cans around town to encourage recycling and educate the public a bit. The second is to create they have the little libraries around town, they have the books. These would actually have various medical supplies at some of the playgrounds. So if you're ever looking around in your bag for a Band-Aid or in your pocket for a wipe if you scrape a knee or something, those supplies would be there. The third is to install wire baskets to recycle tennis balls. I learned yesterday that tennis balls will sit in a landfill for 400 years. And these wire baskets are going to present a way to either get them recycled properly or for people to use slightly used tennis balls, say if you want to play fetch with the dog. The district was mentioned here especially as one of the students reminded us that their teacher is consistently asking for tennis balls to put on the bottom of desk chairs and tables. So the request was made, should this project move forward, that we add to the district newsletter that teachers can find tennis balls with reckless abandon at these areas over here. I am not doing that presentation anywhere near enough justice when it comes to it's much more fun from a 5th grader. The last is to build birdhouses and bat boxes, not houses, and they had that at a couple of parks. And the reason I am sorry the McKinley principal left is one of the places they would like to install these birdhouses and bat boxes is at McKinley School. So I certainly told them they should be in touch with the board as far as how that might work. But just to let you know, they're thinking of us, and we may have some additions to the school. So eventful meeting, certainly, and congratulations to the Girl Scout troop. They really did a fantastic job. I mean, they were asked to stand up in front of an entire commission and a pretty full audience and describe their projects in detail. Describe how they identified problems and how they went about solving them. So if you weren't sure about your Girl Scout leadership at McKinley, you should be very certain about it.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Any other liaison reports? All right. During this portion of the meeting, members of the public are invited to address the Board of Education on any topic. The board requests that individuals state their name and address for the record and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president or designate, not to individual board members or staff. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey, and the board bears no responsibility nor will be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, the superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during this public forum, all public comments will be considered. And each speaker's statement is limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. Please come to the podium.
Good evening. Elizabeth Schwartz, Englewood, New Jersey. Good evening, Westfield Board of Education. I'm here today to discuss the pervasive anti-Semitism in the Westfield School District and the inaction by the Board of Education to address it. You should all know that the Westfield School District is known far and wide for its anti-Semitism. It is incomprehensible that a Jewish child committed suicide for being bullied, bullying including disgusting racial slurs against Jews. It is disgusting that swastikas have repeatedly been drawn in the school bathrooms with no known recourse. In late 2021, Westfield community leaders said, "We stand united in our strong condemnation of all acts of hate, bias, and prejudice of any kind, and reaffirm our commitment to working together to ensure Westfield is an inclusive, anti-hate, anti-racist community." I must ask, does this statement apply to your board VP? Because her Twitter account is littered with hateful and untruthful statements about Israel and, by association, Jews. A recent tweet called people racist Zionist trolls. Her Twitter account often posts tweets with references to how terrible Israel is for killing Palestinians, but fails to mention that the Palestinians in her tweets were shooting at troops, part of terror groups, or had murdered innocent children. This is intellectually dishonest, and this dishonesty and fraudulence is pervasive in her Twitter account and actions. In one appalling tweet, she posted how terrible it is that Israel is revoking citizenship of some Arabs without noting that this only applies to people who murdered Jews and get martyr payments. And if you don't know, the Palestinian spends over half of its foreign aid on martyr payments. I know well because my 18-year-old American nephew was murdered by a Palestinian, and his murderer receives over $3,000 a month. That is 4 times that of the average teacher. Inevitably, the board VP will lament that I'm one of the racist Zionist trolls. Every response to someone criticizing the deceptive and hateful actions of the board VP is met with allegations of racism. This is getting old. For the board VP must account for her prejudicial and hateful actions and not hide behind her racial identity and baseless legal threats against people who speak against her. I am asking the board to do 3 things. Remove the current board VP from her leadership position, and if possible, remove her from the board. Per NJ Education Law Section 18A 12-21, school officials must hold the respect and confidence of the people. School officials must avoid conduct which is in violation of their public trust or which creates a justifiable impression that the public trust is being violated. Well, I'm Jewish, and I don't trust her. I have heard many other Westfield residents feel the same way, but many are afraid to express their feelings because of fear of repercussions from the school and the school board.
Thank you. Please finish your sentence. Time's up.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep going just for 1 minute. Start
You
real
can finish your
education.
sentence.
I'm sorry?
You can finish your sentence. We have
Thank
to
you.
enforce the rules for everybody.
Start real education in Westfield on the Holocaust in Israel, including how Jews were given the land of Israel through the Balfour Declaration. There is incontrovertible evidence that Jews have spent thousands of years in the land of Israel. Westfield needs to teach how Palestinians encourage terror by providing martyr payments to terrorists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Crawford, 795 Knollwood Terrace. Just a few questions, just to pick up on the last speaker. I think it's completely inappropriate for anyone to serve on this board or in our school district who harbors racist or anti-Israel views. I don't know how you've investigated that, looked into that, but you can't serve in a position of leadership and expect people to respect that if you have someone in your midst, and I don't know if this person does that or not, quite frankly, but if you have someone in your midst and that is harboring views that are totally counterintuitive to what you're trying to teach our students. All right, so I'll leave it at that on that. With respect to how we got here on the budget, I remember vividly last spring and the painfulness of last spring in terms of the cuts that needed to be made. But that's the cause of that was this district and prior boards abdicating community engagement through a vote every year and trying to live under an unrealistic 2% cap. And quite frankly, I hope you never go back to that, because that was a huge mistake. It created a lot of problems that you've had to deal with over the last year and a half. And really, it's not a progressive way of looking at what we need for our school district. What you should be doing is figuring out what we need and then budgeting to that and then taking that to the voters to get them to approve it based on its merits. I appreciate the gyrations that we're trying to hit a certain number, but honestly, this is not an expense, it's an investment. It's an investment in our kids. It's the most important thing we can give our kids beyond our genes in terms of leaving a legacy. So I don't look at it as a tax, I don't look at it as an expense. It is an investment, and that's the way people need to think about that. With respect to state mandates, I would just simply say it would behoove you to every year tell that story to the voters. If state mandates present a problem for our district, tell them why. Tell voters why, so they can take it up with the state on your behalf. But to just simply sit back and say, well, we have to deal with these state mandates and there's nothing we can do about it, is really not engaging the community. And it's not going to advance this district if you just sit back and just accept it every year. You should be telling the story of how much of the budget is state mandates and how much of it is discretionary every year, and expressing that to voters. And with that, I will leave you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kyle George, 605 Short Hills Court. In May of 2021, after she was already elected to the BOE, Sahara Aziz signed the Palestine and Praxis Pledge, a fact visible both on palestineandpraxis.weebly.com and on a Rutgers CSRR press release. This pledge says a lot, and I don't have time to read it all, but here are some excerpts. Quote, Israel's policies constitute apartheid, bolstered by a brute force that enshrines territorial theft and the racial supremacy of Jewish Zionist nationals. It continues, we affirm that it is no longer acceptable to conduct research in Palestine or on Palestinians without a clear component of political commitment. Next, in the classroom and on campus, we commit to pressuring our academic institutions and organizations to respect the Palestinian call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions of Israel. And finally, in places where we reside, we will support community efforts and legislation to pressure our governments to end funding Israeli military aggression. Signed, Sahar F. Aziz, Rutgers University, Law and Critical Race Theory. This pledge is a commitment to ideological activism permeating all aspects of life. The parts of the pledge calling Israel an apartheid state, claiming Israel's policies are attempting to enshrine racial supremacy of Jews, singling out Israel, and advocacy for BDS are all anti-Semitic. I've spoken numerous times about how now VP Aziz's tweets and other activism and the incompatibility of those actions with being on a school board. Somehow, I'd never seen this pledge and signature until a few days ago. Now it all makes sense. The tweets and other partisan and ideological activism are all a part of VP Aziz's commitment to the pledge. VP Aziz made no attempt to moderate her social media activity since it was first brought to the board's attention in early 2022. In fact, Sahar Aziz was emboldened by this very board telling her in the press that her public actions had no nexus to her role on the board. I guess the jury is still out on that one, so to speak. You know where I stand on this. Where do you stand? Every time someone criticizes her actions, she makes it about her identity. This is blatant misdirection. On February 10th, Sahar Aziz tweeted, quote, "One of the benefits of having Islamophobic and anti-Arab racist trolls and haters track your every tweet and retweet is exposing them to progressive views. They have to read what I write and say, and that increases my impact on them." Smiley face emoji, smiley face emoji. Who exactly is VP Aziz talking about? And can anyone tell me if anti-Semitism is now a progressive view?
Thank you. All right. Seeing no one else come to the podium, ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you. All in favor? All right. Any opposed?